remember, the confidentiality rule says that upon pain of evisceration, you can't tell anybody anything about what you're doing except the client and those people the client authorizes you to tell.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Welcome to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out once again in the podcast chair. Thank you for joining me. Can't wait to bring my good friend, Mr. Tim Andersen, on just a couple of minutes. But first, want to pause and remind you that we're sponsored by some great companies out there, Alamode being one. Folks, I use it every day, and you should be as well, to help you write up your appraisal reports. It's Alamode. Find out more by going to alamode.com or 800 Alamode. And of course, OREP Insurance is my E&O of choice. It should be yours as well. Check them out. Go to orep.org. Again, that's OREP.org. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast chair with my good friend, Mr. Tim Andersen, for another Dear USPAP Instructor episode. Welcome back, Tim.
Dustin, thank you. I appreciate it. And as we record this in February, I won't tell you it's about 85 degrees here.
Well, guess what? You're wrong, because it's the first day of March, my friend.
Oh, that's right. See, I got to catch up. I'm typical. I'm day late and a dollar short.
Hey, it's not often that I get to tell Mr. Tim Andersen he's wrong, so I'm going to take every advantage of it. Super smart guy. Appreciate you coming on. For those who are new to the program, we do this periodically. Regularly, I should say, and that is take questions from listeners or others in the blogosphere that have to do with some USPAP stuff. And since I'm not a very smart guy, I defer to my good friend, who is a USPAP instructor and a longtime appraiser, also the appraiser's advocate. He helps appraisers who might find themselves with that state letter in their hands. Tim, I want to dive into a couple questions that came over and see what your thoughts are. The first one has to do with training, and I know this isn't specific to USPAP, but it kind of is. When it comes to significant assistance, there was a Robert that reached out and said, "I think I messed up." He went on to describe over 200 houses that he had inspected with his son / trainee. And when he went to the state board, the state board basically said, you can't count any of those. And the reason is because he put his son's name on the log, but he did not put his son's name in the report. What say ye?
Okay, Dustin, here's the thing. Because there is no central USPAP authority, it's not like there's a Supreme Court for USPAP that people can go to.
That would be fun, wouldn't it?
Well, probably, and make a lot of money consulting.
Yeah.
But most states say, yeah, as long as somebody's mentioned in the log, we'll give them credit, even if they're not mentioned in the report, or even if they don't sign the cert. There is no rule that says they have to. That's going to be a function of state law. So it just depends on the state. And you didn't tell me which state this was, and I didn't ask, so I don't know. So in this particular state, the state board in its authority, in its collective wisdom, has decided that is not a step it is going to take. So unfortunately, unless our appraiser can persuade the board otherwise, the assistant appraiser, the associate appraiser, is not going to receive any credit toward his or her certification or licensure based on those appraisals.
That's rough. That's rough. Let's change the question just a little bit and make it a little bit more USPAP centric. And I know you and I have talked before here on the program about significant assistance. Should the name have gone in the report in this case? I think he was basically helping him with the inspection, but the appraiser and the trainee were on site on each of these 200 plus homes.
Right. It would have been perfectly okay to say Fred or Ginger or Ricky or Lucy or whoever helped me with this. And we're not talking significant appraisal assistance. We're just talking disclosure. That might have overcome the state's reticence. Whereas had Fred or Ginger or Ricky or Lucy, held the tape and taken photographs and petted the dog and chatted with the homeowners and reviewed the appraisal for mistakes and done the cost approach and calculated the adjustments in the sales comparison approach, then that appraiser would have provided significant appraisal assistance. But again, there's nothing wrong with saying I brought along my son, nephew, father-in-law, stranger off the street, who helped me during this process. And as long as any of those people did not provide significant appraisal assistance, you do not have to call it significant appraisal assistance. Just, somebody helped me.
Gotcha.
You don't have to, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, probably what happened is this particular pairing of appraisers was probably doing work for a client who did not allow a trainee signature or apprentice signature or whatever you call it in that particular state. So therefore, the senior appraiser complied. And while that was perfectly okay with the client, for whatever reason, the state didn't like that. But that's a function of the state board. And that's not a function of, well, that's what USPAP says, because no, it doesn't.
Right.
Or that's what Fannie Mae says. Well, no, that's not what she says. That's just a function of how that particular state is working.
Got it. Thank you, Tim. I want to pause here and remind you that we're sponsored by a great group out there. Of course, OREP Insurance. OREP is my E&O of choice. It should be yours as well. One of the reasons I choose OREP, folks, and there's a lot of choices out there when it comes to E&O, and honestly, probably most of you don't care. And frankly, I'm not going to encourage you to care that much about E&O. You've got other things to worry about. But once a year, at least, you should care. And one of the reasons that I choose OREP is the great benefits, including free education. And I'm talking continued education that most of you can count at your state level. One of the classes that I took was presented by my good friend, Mr. Tim Andersen. And I know there's some other things in the work there at OREP with some additional education coming in the future. So check them out. Go to orep.org. Just go to their webpage, check out the benefits tab, orep.org. That's orep.org. Of course, a la mode is something that, again, do you think about your software every day? Probably not. I do, because I use it every day. And every day I'm blessed with some awesome tools and tech inside the software. It is my software of choice. It should be yours as well. It is a la mode. They lead the industry, and there's a reason for that. Check them out by going to alamode.com, or you can pick up the phone and call them at 800 alamode. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast chair, and I want to welcome back to the program my good friend, Mr. Tim Andersen. Thank you for joining me today, Tim.
Dustin, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to get to chat with your mastermind group members and your Facebook group members, etc. Thank you.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you on. Again, I want to shout out to your services. If people are in need, you call yourself the appraiser's advocate. What's that all about, Tim?
Dustin, I retired from appraising in 2014 and started doing this simply because I saw a need for people to help appraisers. Appraisers were being called up in front of their state boards. They were getting reviews and they were being called on the carpet. and they didn't know what to do. I got no training in this. Tim, help me out, please. So after I was in graduate school, and one of the other students there with me was also from Florida, and he told me a horror story about dealing with the Florida State Board, and he fought them. He had the time and the money, especially the money, to fight them, and he was able to fight them quite successfully. But he said he really needed help and he didn't know where to get it. So this is, and I know he did because I read the transcripts of the administrative hearings in the state appraisal board. So I'm very familiar with it. And so that gave me the impetus to get started in this. And it's turned out to be, quite frankly, a whole lot more fun than appraising. And, I'm 70 years old, so I'm not going to go schlepping around houses anymore, slapping tapes on them. And besides, in Florida, it gets really hot about 10 months of the year. And no, I've been doing this too long.
Pass on that one, huh?
It's a whole lot easier to sit here in the comfort of my office, and which I've spent a lot of time putting together, so it's convenient to help other appraisers, and I absolutely love it. And I've had 2 people that I've helped who were not grateful for my services, but everybody else has been very happy with it. So obviously there's a market niche, and it's something I thoroughly love doing.
Well, I appreciate the service that you provide out there, and if people are in need, reach out to Tim. It's tim@theappraisersadvocate.com. Again, tim@theappraisersadvocate.com. All right, Tim, back to the program. Dear USPAP Instructor, there was a question came across on the Tidewater initiative, and whether or not it was a violation of USPAP. And for those out there who are listening who are not familiar with Tidewater, it is a VA program. It was named after a particular area of the country where there was quite a few, at least back in before this initiative was made an official program, where many of the appraisals were coming in below purchase price. And so VA established a program that would allow the appraiser to communicate a little bit with those individuals involved in that transaction and give them a quote unquote opportunity before the appraisal was turned in. It basically works like this. If an appraiser is working on an appraisal, and let's say the contract price is $350,000, but the appraiser is finding that the comparables and the other approaches to value are indicating a value lower than $350,000. They are able to invoke a Tidewater initiative, and it basically means that an email is sent out to the loan officer, basically saying, "Hey, I'm invoking Tidewater." No details, and I think this is important to the answer that Tim might give here. No details are given as far as what comps have been used, where you're coming. I mean, this always happens, right? In fact, in our office, we have a standard email that we send out when there's a Tidewater initiative, mainly because we want to answer the frequently asked questions up front, because they always say, well, what comps did you use? Well, where are you coming in? Well, you can't say any of that. You basically just have to say, listen, I'm invoking a Tidewater. You have, I think it's 48 hours to respond. And then they can basically come back and try to support why they think that appraisal is worth, or that value, rather, that home is worth at least what the contract is, by providing, what they think are comparables, this, that, and the other. All right. With that set up, Tim, here is the question from Aaron. Aaron says, isn't Tidewater a violation of USPAP? I know that I'm being controversial. Seems like everybody just loves the Tidewater initiative, but I don't see how it is not discussing assignment results, as you are essentially telling the client, quote, I'm not coming in at the purchase price, unquote. Tim?
Okay, Dustin, fine. No, that's a great question, because it shows that somebody is thinking about the process, and that's wonderful. Sure. Remember, the confidentiality rule says that upon pain of evisceration, you can't tell anybody anything about what you're doing except the client and those people the client authorizes you to tell.
Okay.
As a result, because the client says, okay, handle this with the broker, handle this with the title company, handle this with the builder, handle this with the buyer, handle this with the seller, the client is giving you permission to talk to all those people. So no, it's not a violation of USPAP.
Okay. Yeah. Because, and your reason is because the person you're telling is the client.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
You get the client on the phone, say, hey, we got a problem.
Yeah.
The client says, oh, what is it? Well, the contract's at 350 and it's coming in at 300. And of course, at that point, the client goes into full panic mode and says, okay, well, you can get out there and talk to anybody the hell you want to.
Yeah.
So we can get this thing up to $350,000. We can close this deal. No, bam. There's your authorization to talk to anybody you want to. Now, somebody says, well, shouldn't that be in writing? Well, Tidewater is. You have to send an email to the client and, hey, it's not working out. And the client gets back and says, well, okay, let me talk to VA. And then a day later, you get another email. We talked to VA and VA said, talk to whoever you got to talk to. Let's get this thing closed. So there's your permission right there. No. And besides, you're also, you're dealing with, you're dealing with the federal government when you're dealing with VA, because VA doesn't guarantee loans like Fannie and Freddie does. The VA makes the loan. And granted, it's through a bank, but the VA makes the loan. So because the federal government says, oh, yeah, it's okay, go ahead and do that. You're perfectly fine. And when we talked about confidentiality, Dustin, quite frankly, that really applies more than anything else to commercial work, because you're appraising a regional shopping mall, and you're going to get copies of the leases, and the client, the owner of that shopping mall, does not want specific lease data to get out.
Right. I
know that because I've appraised regional shopping malls. And you get copies of all. I mean, you're looking at the Gap lease, and you're looking at Victoria's Secret lease, and you're looking at you're looking at all the big ones, and it's written in legalese, and most of it you can't understand. But yeah, you get all that stuff, and you can pick up the phone and you call the real estate attorney and say, "Is this what's going on?" And yep, that's what's going on. So you're privy to all sorts of confidential data. Whereas, okay, so you say the house has got 1,847 square feet and the county says 1,820 square feet. Who cares? I can flat guarantee you that if you're doing the appraisal for Morgan Stanley, they don't give I have to be careful. They don't care. That doesn't mean anything.
We'll keep it family friendly. They don't care.
Yeah, we got to keep the family friendly mark on here, label on there. Yeah,
my friend, you as always give excellent answers to some great questions out there. Feel free, listeners, to reach out. Tim at theappraisersadvocate.com or the coach at theappraisercoach.com. And we would be pleased to answer your questions. By the way, I should tell you, if you're thinking, well, I don't want my question read on the air, or I want an answer a lot faster than you can get to a podcast, you need not worry about either one of those. Tim and I answer questions very quickly, and we will never use your name on the air without your permission. So thanks to each of you for your questions, and Tim for your expertise. One more time, your email address, Tim, in case people want to get a hold of you.
Tim at theappraisersadvocate.com.
Thank you, folks, and we will see you next time. By the way, if you have not joined us on YouTube, I highly recommend that you do so. You get to see Tim Andersen's awesome orange background. And of course, go over to YouTube and the Appraiser Coach channel and subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Appreciate you being here, folks, and get out there and create some value.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.